February 3rd, 2021, Building Code Board of Appeals regular meeting agenda. First thing we're going to do is roll call. Kathy, can you take roll call, please?
Mr. Abathera.
Here.
Ms. Brooks.
Here.
Mr. Jezerman.
Here.
Mr. Friesen.
Here.
Mr. Miller. We have 4 present, a quorum's present, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Move number 2, the suspension of Building Code Board of Appeals bylaws. This is the proposed resolution to conduct an electronic meeting. Resolved that the Troy Building Code Board of Appeals hereby allows all members to participate in public meetings by electronic means as allowed by Public Act 228 of 2020. Since an in-person meeting could detrimentally increase exposure of board members and general public to COVID-19, it would also be difficult to facilitate in light of the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services epidemic orders protecting public health and safety. Members participating electronically will be considered present and in attendance at the meeting and may participate in the meeting as if physically present. However, members must avoid using email, texting, instant messaging, and other such electronic forms of communication to make a decision or deliberate towards a decision. Resolved that the Troy Building Code Board of Appeals hereby establishes public participation rules for any eligible virtual meetings to provide for 2 methods by which members of the public can be heard by others during meetings. Email sent to bcba publiccomments@troymich.gov and received by 9 a.m. on the day of the meeting will be read during the public comment period of the meeting. Voicemail left at 248-524-3546 and received by 9 a.m. on the day of the meeting will be played during the public comment period of the meeting. Both email and voicemail public comments will be limited to 3 minutes each. Do we have to vote on that?
As far as I understand, yes.
All right.
Motion to approve it, Andy.
I'm sorry, Sandy, you.
I think we made a motion to approve it.
I'll second. Kathy, can you take the vote, please?
Yes, I can. Mr. Chair, I have Mr. Jezerman supporting, not supporting it, but moving it. Do I have support for the meeting, or do we want the motion to read that you moved it and Sandy supports it?
That's fine.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Ms. Brooks.
Approve.
Mr. Jezerman.
Approved.
Mr. Friesen.
Yes, approved.
Mr. Abathera.
Yes, approved.
Motion carries.
Next one, we have the approval of the minutes of the January 6, 2021 meeting. Somebody want to put a motion forward?
Motion to approve, Sandy.
I'll second it.
Sorry.
All right, Kathy, could you take the vote, please?
Mr. Friesen.
Yes.
Mr. Abathera.
Yes.
Ms. Brooks.
Yes.
Mr. Jezerman.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We're going to move to the hearing of the cases. The first one is the variance request at 1525 East Maple by Patrick Steiber of Allied Signs Incorporated for Esther Gayfield. Salim, could you tell us a little bit about it?
Most certainly. The petitioner requests to replace an existing ground sign with one that measures 124.66 square feet in area and 24 feet in height. The City of Troy sign ordinance allows the ground sign to be a maximum of 100 square feet in area and 20 feet in height for Chapter 85 signs. I wanted to add, Gary, that
Yes.
Today we're going to have the assistance of Paul Evans, the zoning and compliance specialist, and Alan Motzin from the City of Troy Attorney's Office. They will get their support.
Okay. Does anybody on the board have any questions for Salim first? Paul.
Yes, if the board members don't have any questions for Salim, I've got a brief presentation. It's one of the late submittals that you received in your packet. If it's amenable to the chair, I'd like to just show a few slides from that, just to give the board an understanding of what they're asking for, how we got here, and answer any additional questions.
That'd be great. Go ahead, Paul.
Paul, I'm going to stop sharing and then you will be the presenter, okay? Can we please
Okay.
make Paul Evans the presenter?
All right. All righty. So as Salim indicated, this is a variance request for property on East Maple. The subject property is outlined in red here in this aerial, and it's north of East Maple and just east of Stevenson Highway. Now that's the same aerial map, and I've overlaid the zoning categories for the properties in various colors. The subject property is located in the GB zoning district, and that's important to get an idea of what signs and regulations are allowed in the GB district. So this is known as the Courtyard by Marriott, and they're asking to replace an existing ground sign and to put it in the same place that the existing ground sign is located. So they're good on setback. That's the existing sign that is current. Now that sign was allowed by a variance granted by this board in 2005. Variances do run with the land, and I'm going to return back to some particulars about this sign in just a few minutes. First, I'd like to show you the sign that they want. This is from their application, and they want to put this sign in the same location as the previous sign. Before I talk about the X's and the O's of their sign, I want to talk about the X's and O's of the ordinance. Now, this is out of our sign code, and as I've indicated, the property is zoned GB. And what this table tells us is that signs can be a maximum of 20 feet tall in the GB district and can be a maximum area of 100 square feet. So back to their application. Excuse me, could we ask Salim, could we ask you to mute? Scale background there. So one part of their variance request is for the area of this sign. They've indicated that it's 124 and a half square feet. And the important thing for the board is that this area that I've outlined in red from their application actually represents that area. So it not only includes the sign cabinet, but also the pole cover. And I'm going to talk a little bit about their existing sign now, how that contrasts and how we measure compared to how they did it before. So that's how we came up with the area. And as you can see here, the height that they're requesting is just under 24. And as we said earlier from the table, the sign code says you can only have 20 feet height. So this is a document from their variance materials from 2005. And a couple things to note here is in 2005, the records show that this sign was calculated at that time to measure 160 square feet. But back then, that measurement only included the cabinet, and it actually included both sides of the cabinet. So one side was 80 square feet, the other side was 80 square feet. So one may say, well, they're asking for 125 square foot sign now, but the variance they have is for 160 square feet. Well, I think it's important that the board be aware that the measurement method that they used back in 2005 is different than what's required now by ordinance. If we were to measure this sign now, we would measure the cabinet side on one side. Because the cabinet is more than 24 inches thick, we would also measure the other side. And then, well, we don't have enough information to tell us how big the existing pole cover is. So it could include one or both sides. And as you can see here, they granted the variance for 25 feet tall. So that's a little history on what the board did in the past, but also some of the differences in how the sign code looks at signs now compared to back then. That's just out of their the meeting minutes there. So what I just want to close with is that the applicant could provide a replacement sign like for like without a variance, because variances do run with the land. They could also replace without a variance a sign that doesn't exceed the existing sign and pole cover exterior perimeter. So if you were to draw an imaginary perimeter around the existing pole cover and sign, if the new sign could kind of fit into there, they wouldn't need a variance. Now, the cabinet messenger artwork, that could be changed at any time without a variance. So with all that being said, they're here for a variance for a larger sign and one that's too tall. So I'll turn it back over to the board for any questions.
Go ahead, Matt.
Paul, what was obviously the code's been revised from back in 2005. What was the allowable square footage back then in 2005 that they had to ask for the variance back then?
I didn't come prepared for that, but I can tell you, I can have that answer in just a few minutes because I do have a copy of that on my computer. Mr. Chair, if we could just, if there's any more questions, I can answer those and then perhaps take just a minute to take a look on my computer.
Wait, I have a question for you.
Yes.
The original variance was for a 25-foot tall sign. And this
Right.
one's 24 foot. Why do they need a variance for the height if it's already been one variance for 25 feet tall?
Excellent question. The variance applies to that particular sign that the board saw. The differences between that sign and the one that the applicant is requesting, it's not the exact same shape. So when you get a sign that's different or may meet some of the numerical requirements of the existing sign, it's hard for staff to speculate whether or not the board may have approved a sign that looks like what they're doing now. We have no way of knowing, but when someone applies for a sign that may still meet the height limit, what if other aspects of that don't meet the limit? So I guess another way to say that, Mr. Abathera, is the specific controls the general, and the more different that a replacement sign is, the more challenging it can be for staff to reasonably feel that this sign is comparable and what the board intended to be. To contrast that, if they proposed a sign that fit within the perimeter of the structure that's out there now, we would have a safety level on that, or a comfort level with that. For example, this sign cabinet is wider than what the board approved back then. So rather than have staff kind of make a call, we'd rather send it to the board and have them have a comfort level that if this is something that the board is amenable to, the board has had full knowledge of the history and exactly what the code says now and what it said back then.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Sandy, you have a question for him?
And I think, Paul, you may have just kind of answered this, but I wanted to ask just kind of an interpretation of the language. When I read the note about within the perimeter or less than, I don't remember the exact language you had used, not exceeding the existing perimeter, I read that as like a overall, there was 100 feet around the perimeter and now it's 100 feet around the perimeter. But you're saying actually laying the shadow of the old lollipop over the new sign, and whether we're projecting beyond that actual geometric outline, not just its length.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, Matt.
I think the one thing that, Paul, you're showing on this last sheet that I kind of understood is that if they were to reuse the cabinet and the pole and put new skins on, say, the top of that and so forth, then we wouldn't be here. It would fall within that variance they already were granted. Is that safe to
That's
say?
correct.
Yeah, but because they're replacing all of that, we're re-reviewing that or
Yes, that's-
re-reviewing that sign variance. Okay.
Yeah, that's accurate.
So Paul, I have a question for you on that. So if we don't grant the variance, they're still going to have a sign there that's going to be 20 up to 25 feet tall and in the same shadow that's there right now, but it'll say Marriott or Courtyard by Marriott. It just
Yeah,
won't
that they
be,
can keep the sign there or, do cosmetic changes to it or even replace. Certainly regarding the specific request of the customer, perhaps the applicant could talk about what
yes.
they might want to do, but they have every right to have everything I described up in accordance with the previous variance. Or if they want to do something that complies with the code and doesn't need a variance, they can do that too.
Okay, does anybody else have another question for Paul, or can you go look for what he's looking for?
I'm actually looking right now.
Okay,
All righty. So I'm going to share, I'm going to put the ordinance up. Can everyone see the ordinance? Is that what's being shared right now?
yes.
Looks like you can, yeah. So this is the ordinance. Well, now that I think about it, this is the ordinance that I've been using since 2007. So I can give a partial snapshot of what the ordinance could have said in 2005, but I can't testify for certain that it said that. But in 2007, the ordinance at the time did allow in that district signs up to 25 feet tall and 200 square feet in area. But once again, I have to say that with caution. That doesn't necessarily answer our question of what was allowed in 2005, which didn't come prepared for that today.
The language, sorry, Chair, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
The language in the minutes that you included said that section 90204 required a sign over 100 square feet, over 20 feet to be set back 30 feet from the right of way. So one could infer that that was the requirement of the ordinance previously.
Paul? In
Yes.
2007, though, it could have been a setback of 30 feet, 25 feet tall, and 200 square feet?
Yeah, if somebody would have come to me in 2007, that's what I would have applied. Yep.
All right. Anybody else have any questions for Paul right now? If not, I'm going to ask the applicant here.
Yes.
Would you like to tell us why you need this variance?
Well, it's a rebranding and an update on an old format sign. The sign is pretty much at the end of its life, and in the process of updating the structure to a new system, they want to incorporate the new branding, which doesn't coincide with the old branding style and shape. So, with the wind loading and engineering based on the steel and the footing that's in the ground on the larger sign, because the footprint of the old sign is larger, the wind load shear points are higher than what this new one would be. That's the design they wanted to go with to fit their new branding standards, and still fall within. They were designing it under the guise of the 2005 variance granted with that language on the square footage allowed at the 80 square foot per side for the 160 square feet. And then with the pylon cover, the existing one is 4.9 by 17.9 feet, which would be 84.3 feet. So applying the sign box area at 80 with the 84.3 in the pylon at 164, they came up with the 124 total outline match, like Paul had said, where you drew the outline around the whole system rather than just the sign cabinet. So by the time they looked at it, the engineers got their eyes on it, the corporate branding got their eyes on it, looking at the variance, they figured that this cabinet was going to come in a foot shorter than the variance that was already under. The square footage of the cabinet was going to be smaller. The square footage of the pylon was going to be smaller. So they wanted to try to replace like for like in that area, because to go back to the 30 feet where the 200 square foot came into play, there's a tree line in the area that would just cut the visibility down. So that's kind of the thinking in the whole process.
Okay. Does anybody on the board have any questions for the petitioner? No? Yes, Matt.
So the sign that you're looking to put in, you are replacing the entire structure, including the pole set into the ground. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're going to go, well, the pole's still structurally sound. So we're going to use the existing pole and the existing footing where it is, and then replace everything around that. So the old structure goes away and everything else is replaced.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would like to make a comment. Based on what the applicant is explaining, I just wanted to also inform everybody that there is a logical request. It's a logical request because it has physical hardship. Because now with the new wind forces that were increased by the Michigan Building Code, the structure will require to be wider and stronger. So I understand where he's coming from, and I just wanted to make the statement that he is basing this on physical hardship.
Okay, thank you, Slim. Paul, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Back before this, did they add the pole as part of the sign? Like now I'm looking at it, it shows, the new courtyard sign shows the sign plus the skin going up from the ground up to it. Is that how they get 124.6 feet?
Right.
And is that how they figured it back on the old courtyard sign too?
Well, I'm not sure what the let's see, the picture of the variance, all they computed appears to be the cabinet on top of the full cover, both sides of the cabinet.
I've got I can help Paul with the measurements. The old variance cabinet, the cabinet is 7.1 feet tall by 11.23 feet wide. So the square footage was just of the cabinet. They did not include the pylon cover, as the new sign does, is not incorporated in that 160 square feet.
Okay.
I concur, yes.
All right, so Paul, back then we didn't include the pylon for part of the sign, for the square footage of the sign.
The cover was not included, right?
Okay. And with our new ordinance now, it does include it.
Yes,
Okay.
it has to meet certain width requirements, but in this instance, it does meet those requirements, so it is included.
Okay. All right.
I need to make another statement, Gary. So if independently from the approval or non-approval from this meeting, if it gets approved, you still have to meet the Michigan Building Code requirements. So we'll still have to look at the structure. So if they approve that pole, it doesn't mean it's approved. We still have to put it through our approval in our plan review. And we need also a statement from an engineer saying that that structure will resist those wind forces. Okay? Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Teresa? All right. Anybody have any comments that we can discuss? Teresa?
No, just with the new structure to the east, I was going up I-75 the other day, and I mean, yeah, it's a quick pass, but that was a large building to the east of the courtyard.
Okay.
So I could understand the sign being a little bit larger, so maybe it's just a bit more visible.
I'm not really sure the sign is much bigger, is it? Because back then, they didn't use the pylon as part of their sign.
Right. Right.
I mean, I like their new branding. I think it looks, newer and up to date. Sandy?
Yeah.
So generally speaking, right? I mean, we got a couple little games between now it's the pole. Before it wasn't the pole, but before it was 27 inches. So we counted both sides, and now we're counting one side. And at the end of the day, the sign is nominally smaller than anybody would think of conceptually of the sign, right? The sign is about, rough numbers, I'm not go down to quarter inches, right? But rough numbers, you got a 60-foot sign where we used to have an 80-foot sign, give or take. It's narrower, it's shorter, it's in the same general intent of what the existing sign does. The only thing that's at all, more aggressive, or I don't want to say more in conflict, is because it is wider, it's reaching closer to the street. But I would say that's nearly negligible on the scale we're talking about. So, I think it all makes sense.
Yes, Matt.
Sandy brought up a good point. So I did drive by this. I didn't pay attention to the fact. Do we have any overhead utilities that would come into play on this sign? Nothing. I mean, I don't know if Salim, if you have pictures back of their request, anything on that roadside.
There are several pictures, but I'm not the presenter right now. If you want to see them, I can request to be the presenter and I can show them to you.
Go ahead. Hold on, Salim. Teresa?
Well, no, as those pictures come up, I think there's buried utilities because there's a bunch of flags in the pictures, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if there's overhead, but
There is an overhead set of lines, but they're out past the sidewalk. But yeah, you got to go ahead with if Celine, you got the presenter. If you can put the picture up.
Yeah, thank you.
And yeah, just looking at the pictures, I guess it's just like you brought up, Sandy. It's just to ensure. I mean, again, I didn't take measurements or anything at the site when I drove by, but it was just to ensure we're not impeding on the sidewalk or anything like that.
You have a good view of the picture?
You're not sharing, Celine.
No, I'm not. I don't have a button to share. It's very light.
The picture from the variance grant in 2005 shows all the overhead wires. Right. That's
Stevie,
what I'm looking at.
Sorry.
While you're looking for that, Salim,
Okay, I'm gonna post it. I'll put it again. Do you see it now?
yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I'm
Okay,
looking at
so-
the wires.
So that's, let me know if you need me to stop in one of them. I'll just present them all.
While we're there, is Kathy, can you hear me? Do we
Yes, I
have
can.
any letters or phone calls from anybody?
I am not aware if Ms. Ferenz is available, she can answer
Jackie,
that.
there she is. I'm sorry, Kathy. Jackie?
That's okay.
Yep. We have not had any public comment submitted for the case.
Okay. Sounds good. And I have one more for the petitioner. We only have 4 people today in our meeting. It takes 3 to get 3 to pass. If it comes back 2-2, it would be a fail. It's your decision if you want us to go forward or to
Yes.
wait.
Yeah, please proceed.
Okay. All right. With that being said, does anyone want to put a motion together? Sandy, you had some good points there.
Matt would do it since he's got the most history on this one compared to anybody here.
Nice history. That was the predecessor.
But yes, I'm okay with putting a motion to approve the sign request as proposed due to the, I gotta grab the actual template, don't I? Sorry,
Okay.
this template's different than a normal template. Maybe I have to stop for a second. Actually, I don't know if I can stop midstream here, but we had a good conversation with Alan a while back about these approvals. Maybe just make sure I don't do anything wrong. I have to approve for all of these reasons. One of these reasons.
You want to ask Alan?
Yes,
Go ahead,
please.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. The new ordinance provides that there should be a finding on all the criteria. As you recall, we amended the ordinance because our previous ordinance was found to be too vague and it was found to be unconstitutional. So that's why these are more specific, but a motion to approve should touch upon each of the criteria.
You made me work today. Gary, this one should be yours, man.
No, all yours, Sandy.
Yep.
Gary?
Some of this language is,
I can put the template, the resolution template, I got it right here. It's the one I
yeah,
had before.
I just, you know, it is hard because as Mr. Monsney noted, they're much more specific language to be more restrictive. And unfortunately with the existing condition, being such that it is, this, I think this approval makes sense. But the language may not, you know, doesn't really have an exception for that.
So you can't just say because it meets all A, B, C, D, and E of the, or do you have to hit on each one? Alan?
Down.
If you make a motion saying that you found that it meets all criteria, that would be a satisfactory motion. Of course, if it's challenged in court, the more you could touch upon the specific criteria, it would be better. But a proper motion should have some indication that the board found that the 5 criteria have been satisfied.
And I guess that's my thought is some of the way some of this language is written, you know, is debatable outside and above the, you know, actual conditions here.
Would you like to you want me to try to put the motion in front, Sandy, for you?
Go for it, man.
All right, what's the address again? I'm sorry.
Celine, do you have the address?
Yeah, one second.
1525 East Maple.
1825, did you say?
1525 East
Okay.
Maple. And this is the chapter 85.
Yep. So I'm going to cast a resolution that this variance request for 1525 West Maple be granted for the following reasons. We believe as a board that it meets all 5 of the criteria for exceptional characteristics of the property. The characteristics which make the compliance for this requirement of this chapter difficult must be related to the premises for which it was sought. The characteristics which make this compliance and follows the chapter 85. It falls within any compliance requirements, and the proposed variance will not be harmful or alter any essential characters of the area in which the property is located.
Do we have a second for that?
It's East Maple.
Is it East Maple?
Yes.
Sorry about that. We're going to correct that there, Kathy. It's 1525 East Maple.
I have the correct address. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
I will second.
Okay. Kathy, you want to take a vote, please?
Mr. Apathera,
Yes.
Ms. Brooks,
Yes.
Mr. Jezerman,
Yes.
Mr. Friesen,
Yes.
motion carried unanimously.
You're all set with your sign. Thank you.
Good day.
Thank you.
Paul, you're all set if you'd like to leave. And Alan, thank you for showing up.
All right. Thank
Any
you.
questions for Alan or Paul before you leave? No? All right, man. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thanks. Thank you.
We'll move on to communications. Kathy, do we have any communications today?
You can ask Ms. Ferenz. I'm not aware of any,
Sorry,
Gary.
Kathy.
That's okay.
Jackie,
No, we do not have anything. Thank you.
do we have any public comment today?
There is no public comment submitted.
Do we have any miscellaneous business?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, we are adjourned.